You know, the choice of the next Republican vice president, it might just be the most important political decision of the year. But here's the thing, it has less to do with who's at the top of the ticket and everything to do with choosing the future identity of the entire party.
So what's really at stake here? Are we just talking about a choice between two well-known politicians? Or, is this something way, way bigger? A fundamental battle for the soul of the Republican Party, a decision between two starkly different paths to power.
And this whole battle, it really comes down to two guys. On one side, you've got JD Vance. He's kind of seen as the authentic voice of the ultra-MAGA base, and he was crushing it in the early polls. On the other side, there's Marco Rubio, the more traditional statesman who's now, interestingly, gaining some serious traction. Two completely different men representing two vastly different strategies.
Okay, so to really get what's going on here, we have to get inside the mind of a voter that, let's be honest, the media often misunderstands. So who is this ultra-MAGA voter? What's fueling their anger, and what do they actually want from their leaders?
Well, we're talking about a huge group of people, mostly white males, who feel completely left behind. These are voters who are convinced that for decades, big economic and cultural changes have just worked against them. And they feel like the political and media establishment doesn't see them as people to listen to, but more like a problem they just have to, manage.
All right, and this is where it gets really interesting, because this slide breaks down exactly why they feel this way. Let's dig in. On the economic side, there's this feeling of injustice, like they're getting the short end of affirmative action or losing their jobs because of globalization. Then culturally, they feel attacked, blamed for stuff like toxic masculinity, while they're the ones doing society's quote-unquote dirty work for basically no credit. A lot of these guys served in Iraq and Afghanistan and then came home feeling like they were demonized. So the big takeaway here is this constant feeling that they always get the short end of the stick. And that feeling, that is some powerful political fuel.
But this is where things get really complicated and, frankly, dangerous. All of that legitimate anger, it's like a magnet for some really, really toxic ideas lurking on the political fringe. And those folks see all this frustration as a golden opportunity.
And wow, this quote from our source really just lays out the problem in the starkest way possible. The point is, anytime you have a big, angry group of people, you're going to get these fringe voices trying to hijack that anger by blaming a scapegoat. And in this case, it's a deeply anti-Semitic element that is totally incompatible with the mainstream Republican Party.
And the source even names names, pointing to figures like Nick Fuentes, a well-known white nationalist, who is actively trying to take over this movement for his own hateful agenda. So this creates a huge problem for any politician trying to connect with that base. How do you embrace the voter without embracing the poison? All right, so that brings us to path number 1, the strategy we see from JD Vance. And you should really think of it like a political high-wire act. It's this super delicate balancing act, right? You got to embrace the energy of the base, but you absolutely cannot fall off into that extremist abyss.
And this is really the core of it, right here. How do you, surgically cut out the hateful anti-Semitic leadership of the fringe without pushing away the much larger group of voters who share the same frustrations but not the hate? Man, that is an incredibly difficult needle to thread.
And this is where you see Vance's approach in action. When Fuentes attacked his wife, Vance didn't hold back. His response? It was crude, yeah, but it was also super direct. It was all about drawing a really clear line in the sand. It's a strategy of just direct, forceful pushback.
And here's what makes this so much bigger. A lot of people see Vance not just as a VP pick, but as a potential future leader of the whole MAGA movement. So this isn't just about picking a VP. It's like a test drive for a strategy that could shape the entire party for the next 10 years, maybe more.
Okay, so let's switch gears and look at the other path, the more traditional establishment route represented by Marco Rubio. But hey, don't let that establishment label fool you. In today's GOP, even a guy like Rubio has had to change his game.
So what's the case for Rubio? Well, his supporters will point you right to his track record, especially in foreign policy. The source highlights things like his work pushing back on Chinese influence in Panama, his big role in Venezuela policy, and the fact that he's a go-to guy on the future of Cuba. That's his whole brand, the steady, experienced hand on the wheel.
And man, his style, it is night and day compared to Vance. The source describes his appearances as something like a calm tutorial on how to methodically handle your political opponents. It's all very measured, all designed to project competence and control, not that raw populist energy.
So, we've looked at these two completely different playbooks. Where does that leave the party? Well, pretty much right back where we started, staring at a massive dilemma that has no easy out and huge risks no matter which way they go.
And this table, I think it just lays it all out perfectly. Let's break it down. You go with JD Vance, you're trying to directly engage that fired-up base. The risk? You look like you're connected to that toxic fringe, no matter how hard you try to distance yourself. Okay, so what about Marco Rubio? He brings a calm, more traditional approach. But his risk? You could completely alienate that same energized base that feels like the establishment has been ignoring them for years.
And at the end of the day, it all boils down to this one huge question that's going to define the future of the Republican Party, and maybe all of American politics. Can you tap into all that genuine frustration from a base that feels forgotten without getting burned by the extremism that comes along for the ride? Honestly, the answer to that is anyone's guess.